I used to love the holidays. The lights, the music, the slow return of warmth to cold places. It always made everything feel softer somehow. But this past Christmas, all it brought me was clarity. Unwanted, brutal, merciless clarity. It started at Ashley's office holiday party. The whole thing was held at this fancy downtown hotel, the kind with velvet armchairs in the lobby and chandeliers so big you wonder if they've ever dropped on anyone. I'd always supported Ashley's career, even when her schedule got packed with evening events and weekend retreats. But this time, something felt different before we even walked through the door. She was quiet in the car. Not the usual pre-party nerves. Not the Ashley I knew, the one who used to sing along to the radio, even when she was running late or tired. Tonight, she barely looked out the window. Her lipstick was darker than usual, her perfume stronger, and she kept checking her phone like she was waiting for someone to text her. "You good?" I asked at one point. She forced a quick smile. "Yeah, just work stuff. I might need to step away during the party to talk to someone from the Atlanta team." That made sense, I guess. I didn't question it, but I should have. We walked in, and right away, I felt like a background extra in someone else's movie. Everyone was in cocktail attire, laughing like they'd known each other for years. I hovered near the drinks table, waiting for Ashley to make her rounds so we could settle in. But she didn't come back. That's when I saw her across the room. She wasn't looking for me. She wasn't even pretending to look. She was laughing, really laughing, like I hadn't seen her do in weeks. Her body was slightly turned toward him. Him being Jason, her boss, the VP of Business Development. Tall, perfect posture. A guy who always seemed just a little too smooth for his own good. I'd met him a couple times before. He shook my hand too softly, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was standing close to her. Way too close. At first, I told myself to calm down. Maybe it was just the angle. Maybe the crowd was forcing everyone together. Maybe I was misreading things. But then I saw his hand slide along the small of her back, just beneath her shoulder blades, in a way that no colleague should ever touch another, not at a company party, not with their spouse in the room. Her face didn't change. No tension. No surprise. She kept laughing, pouring him a second glass of cider from the punch bowl like they were at home hosting guests. He leaned into her ear and whispered something. She nodded and smiled. Not once did she glance around. Not once did she look for me. That was the moment I stopped telling myself I was imagining things. Because I wasn't. I stayed where I was. I didn't make a scene. I didn't walk over or interrupt. I just watched, and somehow the longer I stood there, the more invisible I felt. Like I didn't exist at all. Like I was some stranger who'd wandered into the wrong room. Watching your own wife laugh with another man and pretend you're not there. It's a special kind of pain. Not the cinematic, shouting in the rain kind. No, this was quieter. More surgical. A betrayal by omission. I waited for her to break away, to look around and spot me, to wave me over. She didn't. Later that night, after we left the party, the silence between us in the car was deafening. I kept glancing over, half expecting her to explain something, to say, "You saw that, huh?" But she didn't. Instead, she scrolled on her phone, replying to messages with that faint half-smile she used to give me when we first started dating. I hated that I recognized it. Later that night, after we left the party, the silence between us in the car was deafening. I kept glancing over, half expecting her to explain something, to say, "You saw that, huh?" But she didn't. Instead, she scrolled on her phone, replying to messages with that faint half-smile she used to give me when we first started dating. I hated that I recognized it. When we got home, I finally broke the silence. "So Jason seems comfortable with you?" I said, trying to sound casual, even though my hands were still clenched from earlier. She looked up at me, confused, or pretending to be. "Huh. At the party," I said. "He had his hand on your waist for like a full minute." She laughed. Not a real laugh. The kind of laugh people do when they're buying time. "You're being dramatic," she said. "Jason flirts with everyone. That's just how he is." "Yeah," I said. "But you let him. You didn't even look at me." She narrowed her eyes. "Are you seriously jealous right now? At a Christmas party? I swear you always do this. You invent something out of nothing." That was the moment I realized we weren't going to have an honest conversation. Not about Jason. Not about anything. She went to bed early that night. Said she was tired. Didn't kiss me goodnight. I lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering how long I'd been asleep to my own life. Wondering how many times she'd smiled like that for someone else. Wondering if I'd let this happen by being too trusting, too naive, too in love. I replayed the scene in my head again and again. The way he touched her, the way she leaned in, the way the world seemed to shrink down to just the two of them while I stood in the corner like some outsider. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But something had shifted. A crack had opened in the glass, and once you notice a crack, you start seeing all the other ones you missed before. I wasn't sure what hurt more, watching it happen or realizing she didn't care that I did. They say hindsight's 20/20, but what they don't tell you is how much it hurts to look back and realize all the signs were always there. Quietly waving, desperately trying to get your attention while you just smiled and kept walking. In the days after the party, something in me shifted. I stopped making excuses. I stopped brushing off the little things. Because they weren't little. Not anymore. Take the late nights, for example. At first, they seemed reasonable. Ashley had just gotten promoted to senior client strategist, and with that came more responsibility. More meetings. More working dinners. She'd always been ambitious, and I respected that. But over time, those dinners became more frequent, less predictable. And somehow, every time I offered to drive her or even pick her up, she'd find a reason to decline. "It's just easier if I Uber," she'd say, or, "It's a quick dinner, not worth the hassle." I wanted to believe her, so I did. Until I didn't. Then there were the clothes. Ashley always had good style, but lately it had changed. New pieces that didn't feel like her. Dresses that showed more skin. Shoes she could barely walk in. And lingerie, God, the lingerie. I found a bag from a boutique I'd never even heard of, tucked away in the back of our closet. When I asked her about it, she shrugged and said she bought it on impulse. But the tags were gone, and I'd never seen her wear any of it. Not with me, anyway. It wasn't just what she wore. It was how she acted. She used to leave her phone face up on the coffee table, laughing at memes and texting me updates during the day. But now it was face down. Always. And locked. She used to use Face ID, something we both set up for each other years ago, during a lazy Sunday morning when it felt cute, like some silly modern version of trust. One night, I picked up her phone to silence a call while she was in the shower, and I noticed the unlock screen had changed. Face ID disabled. Code only. She never mentioned why. Then there was the texting. Always smiling to herself, always tilting the screen away, always responding quickly, but only sometimes. Other times, I'd text her and get no reply for hours. And when I asked why, she'd say she was in a long meeting or her phone died. But the battery percentage would be full when she got home. I didn't say anything. I told myself not to be paranoid. But the gut doesn't lie. I started watching more closely. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I couldn't keep pretending to trust a version of her that no longer existed. One afternoon, while she was out grocery shopping, I opened her laptop. Not to snoop, not really. Just to see if I was losing it. But her browser history was wiped clean. No tabs left open. No sign of any recent activity. Ashley had never been the kind of person to clear her history. I told myself maybe it was automatic. Maybe she was worried about viruses. Maybe. But those maybes were getting harder to believe. A week later, I noticed something odd on our shared calendar. She'd created an event titled, "Pick Up the Report from Jay." Vague enough to be forgettable, but something about the day caught my attention. It was on a Sunday. No meetings. No work. No real reason to be seeing Jason, unless Jason was more than just her boss. When I asked her about it casually, she brushed it off. "Oh, that? Jason had some old client files he wanted me to scan for the Q1 deck. He was passing through town anyway. It was easier than waiting." "Passing through?" I asked. "Doesn't he live here?" She blinked, just for a second too long, before laughing. No, I meant he was driving back from a wedding or something. God, you're always so suspicious. I let it go. But I didn't forget. From that moment on, everything that once seemed minor started mapping itself into a bigger picture. Clearer picture. Like the business trip in October. The one that got extended last minute, where she said she had to stay an extra night because her team lead booked the wrong return flight. She sent me a photo from the hotel lobby. Half her face, a blurry Christmas tree in the background, and said she'd call me later. She never did. Then there was the sudden interest in fitness. She started jogging in the mornings, something she hadn't done since college, but never wanted me to come with her. She bought a brand new set of matching workout clothes. Expensive ones. I tried to join her once, laced up my sneakers and waited by the door, but she claimed her route was too fast for me. I didn't argue. And the perfume. She started wearing this new scent. Strong. Not the soft vanilla she used to love, but something bolder, muskier. One night, I hugged her, and the smell clung to my clothes like it was fighting to stay. Even the way she used her phone changed. One night, I saw her open a message, read it and then delete it, all in the span of 5 seconds. When I asked who it was, she said it was spam. Spam doesn't make you smile. Spam doesn't make you hide your screen. Spam doesn't make your wife act like a stranger in her own house. It wasn't one big thing. That's what made it so hard to confront. It was death by paper cuts. 1,000 tiny details that, on their own, could be explained, could be forgiven. But together they formed a pattern, a story. And I was starting to realize I wasn't the main character in it anymore. I didn't talk to anyone about it. Not yet. I wasn't ready to say it out loud, because saying it made it real. Instead, I started writing things down. Times, dates, locations. I checked our credit card statements. I noticed charges at restaurants we never went to, hotel bars. One of them was on a Tuesday, the same Tuesday she told me she had a late presentation and stayed at the office until midnight. There was a charge at 8:47 p.m. 2 glasses of wine, 1 appetizer, and then nothing. No Uber receipt, no Lyft, no parking garage. Nothing until she came home at 12:23 am. Eyes glassy, lips slightly smudged, smelling of that damn perfume and saying, "Sorry, long night. I'm beat." She kissed me on the cheek and went straight to bed. And I just stood there, still pretending not to know what I knew, still hoping to be wrong. But I wasn't. The pattern was speaking. I just had to keep listening. You can lie to yourself for a while. You can second-guess the signs, reinterpret the evidence, choose comfort over conflict. But there's always a moment. One that strips the delusion clean. Mine came at another work event, less formal than the holiday party. More int asterisk mate. Ashley had invited me, technically. She told me the firm was hosting a winter mixer at a downtown rooftop bar, cocktails, hors d'oeuvres, some light networking. She said I could come if I wanted to, but her tone was distant, like she was doing me a favor by even mentioning it. Still, I went, partly to be supportive, mostly to see. When I arrived, the sky was darkening into that slate-gray December hue. Strings of fairy lights wrapped around the railings, soft jazz played in the background, and tiny fireplaces flickered between low lounge chairs. Ashley was already there. Of course she was. She didn't notice me at first, and I didn't call her name. I just watched. Jason was with her again. No surprise there. But this time, the air between them was heavier, more charged. His hand was on her lower back. Again. But longer this time, fingers drifting slightly, like he'd done it before and gotten used to not being stopped. She stood still. She didn't flinch. She didn't laugh or brush it off like before. She just let it happen. He leaned in, said something close to her ear. She smiled. Slow, reserved, like she didn't want to give too much away in public but couldn't help herself. A look passed between them. I wasn't close enough to hear their words, but I didn't need audio. Their body language screamed fluency. And still, she didn't look around. Didn't look for me. I stepped forward, closer. The kind of close that would make someone nervous if they had anything to hide. But neither of them even blinked. She was too busy pouring him another drink. He was too busy watching her hands. I stood 3 feet away. Still nothing. And that's when I knew I wasn't part of this scene. I was a loose thread, a background blur, an optional presence in a story already written. So I turned away. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out Ashley's car keys. I had driven her there, assuming we'd leave together. How naive. I walked up to the bar, nodded to the bartender, and slid the keys across the counter. If she asks, I said quietly, tell her her husband left them. He raised an eyebrow but said nothing, just nodded. I didn't look back. I didn't wait to see if she'd notice. I didn't make a scene, didn't storm off, didn't shout her name across the room. That wasn't what this was about. This wasn't a movie. There was no big speech coming. No gasp, no slap, no drama. Just silence. The kind that says more than 1,000 accusations. I walked out onto the street. It had started to snow, light flakes that didn't stick. The kind that danced under the streetlights and melted before they hit the ground. I shoved my hands in my coat pockets and kept walking. She didn't call me. Not that night. Not the next morning. Eventually, she texted, "Hey, did you leave? I can't find my keys." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Check the bar. Nothing after that. No follow-up. No apology. Not even a fake excuse. She came home late that night. I was already in bed, lights off, pretending to sleep. I heard her moving around downstairs, taking off her heels, opening and closing the fridge. She didn't come upstairs. She slept on the couch. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. Made coffee. Asked if I wanted eggs. I said no. She nodded like we were just roommates who had a mild disagreement. She didn't bring up the party. Didn't ask why I left. Didn't mention Jason. It was almost impressive the way she could slide into denial like a second skin. But I didn't push. Not yet. Because I wasn't angry. I was focused. Something in me had gone quiet. A kind of calm I hadn't felt in weeks. I wasn't spinning anymore. I wasn't trying to understand or decode her lies. I wasn't desperate to save whatever this was. I had moved on, not emotionally, not yet, but in mindset. Now it was about control. Clarity. I spent the next few days taking inventory. Not of our stuff, but of our timeline. I started with her calendar. Pulled copies from our shared cloud. She'd forgotten to turn off syncing. I noted every late night, every out-of-town meeting, every team dinner. Then I opened our credit card statements. I built a spreadsheet. Date, time, location, amount. The pattern was obvious once you looked at it long enough. Hotel lounges. High-end restaurants we never went to. A boutique in Soho where she'd bought men's cologne once. I remembered asking about it. "Oh, it's for my dad," she said. Her dad lives in Arizona. She didn't visit that month. I cross-referenced everything. Dates she claimed to be with coworkers matched charges in places she had no reason to be. There was a line item for 2 tickets to a jazz show downtown. The same night she told me she was too tired to go to my cousin's engagement party. She said she stayed home. She didn't. I kept digging. Her photos were synced too. Not all of them, just the ones that auto-uploaded before she started being more careful. Among them was a sh*T of a wine glass, half full, resting on a rooftop table. Behind it, barely visible, was Jason's sleeve, the same suit I'd seen him wearing at the mixer. Another image, a reflection in a window, 2 figures, close, one clearly her, the other taller, leaning in. She had tried to crop it, but the metadata was still there. Time, date, location. I saved it all. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. And as the days passed, I started to see just how far it had gone. How long I'd been living beside someone who had quietly rewritten our marriage like a script she no longer liked. How many times I had been fed a version of reality that suited her convenience. It wasn't just betrayal. It was erasure. She had erased me from the parts of her life that mattered. And I was done pretending that was okay. There's something eerie about the way your brain quiets when the emotional part finally shuts off. I thought I'd be consumed by rage. That I'd flip tables, scream, demand answers. But instead, what I felt was stillness, heavy, surgical, deliberate. I wasn't angry. I was focused. I don't think Ashley ever really understood what I used to do for work. She knew the headline, security consultant, but she didn't ask about the details, or maybe she just didn't care. Which, in hindsight, worked in my favor, because it meant she never realized what I was actually capable of. My job used to be all about identifying threats, patterns, inconsistencies, digital footprints. I trained executives how to catch lies before they metastasized. I helped banks detect fraud buried under thousands of clean-looking transactions. I taught corporations how to see what wasn't being said. Now, I was applying all of that to my own marriage. The first step was simple: gather intel. No confrontations. No assumptions. Just data. Ashley had gotten lazy, complacent, or maybe she just underestimated me. She still used our shared iCloud for backup, a habit she never thought twice about. She had her own phone plan, her own email, her own routines. But the iPad in our kitchen drawer still pulled from the same cloud as her phone. That's where I started. Photos, calendar invites, notes, *TS she forgot she saved. It was all there, fragments of a life she thought was hidden. There were pictures from business trips she never mentioned. One of her on a balcony with a city skyline behind her. A city she told me she hadn't visited since last spring. Her caption, late checkout relieved face. Jason was in the reflection of the sliding glass door. His silhouette, barely visible, was unmistakable. I found another image, this one in a hotel lobby. She had posted it to her stories, just a filtered *T of a chandelier. But in the bottom corner, blurred and tiny, was a man's hand resting on her knee. Cropped, but not gone. It wasn't mine. Then there were *TS. Messages with Jason saved like digital souvenirs. One of them read, "I still smell like you. Thanks for last night, smiling face with horns." She had saved it in a locked note titled Receipts. Why? Why would you save that? Maybe it was ego. Maybe she liked looking back on the things she got away with. Maybe she just liked the idea of being wanted by someone else. The deeper I went, the more pieces I uncovered. She told me she was in Denver for a leadership conference back in September. She said it was back-to-back panels and working lunches. No time for sightseeing. But her expense report, the one she scanned to her notes app, showed a charge at a winery an hour outside the city. 2 guests. Tasting menu. Midday. I remembered that weekend clearly. She FaceTimed me from the hotel room, sitting on the bed, dressed down, no makeup. Told me she'd spent the afternoon reviewing notes from a keynote speaker. The timestamp on the winery receipt? Same afternoon. There was no keynote. That part she made up. It wasn't even sophisticated lying. Just careless. Lazy. She wasn't used to being watched. I built out a timeline. Layered her calendar against my own. Noticed where things didn't add up. There were gaps. Empty hours labeled project review or client notes. I checked her company's Slack. The desktop version was still logged in on our home computer. No messages during those gaps. No pings. No activity. She wasn't working. She was somewhere else. I kept going. Pulled metadata from her photos. Geolocation tags. Even deleted ones, if they had synced before she wiped them from her phone. One photo, never shared, showed her at a rooftop pool. Not the hotel she claimed to be at. A different one entirely. Higher end. I searched the tile pattern and found it matched a boutique hotel in Boston. Jason had posted a LinkedIn update from a seminar there that same week. They were in the same city. Same hotel. Same floor. I knew because her geotag placed her 4 rooms down from his reservation, which I confirmed through public records and a dummy email address. I wasn't spiraling. I was organizing. Sorting truth from fiction. I started recording everything. Not out of paranoia, but because I knew I'd need it. Not for revenge, not for some courtroom drama, but to know once and for all that I wasn't crazy, that I hadn't imagined the distance, the lies, the replacement of *Macy with excuses. I backed everything up to a private drive, encrypted, redundant, and then I called Luis. We hadn't spoken in years. He was the kind of friend you only called when things went really, really bad. I met him back when I was consulting on a digital forensic audit for a multinational bank. He was running the audit team. Smart, cautious, brutal when needed. I didn't give him the full story right away. Just told him I had a personal situation that required some forensic precision. "I'm not asking you to dig," I said. "I've already done the digging. I just need confirmation." He agreed to meet for coffee. I brought the drive. Inside were 183 calendar inconsistencies, 47 photos with metadata proving contradictory location data, 22 overlapping travel receipts, 11 **TS of questionable messages, 4 unsent drafts addressed to Jason, written in the Notes app, and 1 recording, a screen capture of her texting him from our living room while I was upstairs fixing the Wi-Fi. Luis didn't say much as he scrolled through. He just nodded. At one point, he looked up at me and said, "You're sitting on a gold mine." "I don't want gold," I replied. "I want truth." That's when he leaned back and said, "Jason's name's familiar." "What do you mean?" "He's been on a couple of internal reviews. I know a guy in compliance at their firm. Jason's popped up a few times. Nothing confirmed, but flagged." "For what?" "Excessive reimbursements. Client relationships that don't check out. Nothing actionable yet. But if your stuff connects the dots." He trailed off. That's when I realized this wasn't just personal. Jason wasn't just cheating with my wife. He was sloppy, professionally too. And if I passed the right information to the right people, he wouldn't just lose Ashley. He could lose everything. That was never the plan. But it was suddenly available. Luis asked for a copy. I handed it over. And in that moment, I felt something lift. Not closure, not peace, but power. A quiet kind of power that comes when you stop asking for truth and start proving it yourself. When I handed Luis the drive, I expected a few days of silence. Maybe a short follow-up call. I didn't expect movement. Not right away. But 2 days later, he texted me, "He's already on a watch list. You just gave them teeth." That's how it started. No explosions. No big confrontation. Just a quiet internal quake at Ashley's company. Invisible from the outside but unmistakable to those who knew what to look for. Luis didn't go through HR. That would have been too slow, too political. He went to internal compliance. Straight to a contact we both knew. Someone who didn't flinch when things got messy. Someone who didn't care about office gossip or department loyalties. All they needed was one last thread to pull. I had handed them the whole spool. **TS. Expense reports. Time-stamped messages. Geolocation data. Side-by-side timelines showing Jason's business trips aligning too perfectly with Ashley's conferences. Photos she didn't mean to back up. Metadata she didn't know how to strip. It was meticulous. Clinical. The kind of file that doesn't suggest suspicion, it confirms it. I included a separate folder titled Non-Professional Conduct. Not as revenge, but as context. Contained 2 videos. Short, subtle. Taken at the holiday party and the rooftop mixer. Jason's hand on her waist. Jason's whisper in her ear. Her smile, her stillness. No sound. Didn't need it. The visuals were enough. Luis's contact didn't reply directly. But within the week, Jason's company email was disabled. He stopped showing up to in-person meetings. A memo went out that he was on leave due to an ongoing internal matter. Ashley didn't tell me any of this. I found out through their internal Slack, which she still hadn't logged out of on our home desktop. She mentioned him only once during dinner that week. Offhandedly. Said Jason was traveling and that someone else was handling client presentations. I didn't respond, just kept chewing, kept listening. 3 days later, she got an email marked confidential for your statement. I didn't open it, but the subject line was enough. Internal compliance had reached out, not to accuse, not yet, but to gather details. Ashley was in the kitchen when she read it. I watched her face change. Not panic, not guilt, but something closer to calculation. like someone remembering the story they'd already prepared in case things ever came to this. She didn't bring it up. But that night, she spent an hour typing alone in her office. A witness statement, I assume. I didn't interfere. I didn't correct her version. I didn't send an anonymous tip or try to blow it wide open. That was never the point. I wasn't there to play hero. I was just letting the truth surface. And it did. Because when someone like Jason finally slips, everyone who had to stay quiet suddenly finds their voice. Luis texted me again a few days later. Others are talking now. One from the Boston trip. Another from Denver. It's not just Ashley. That part stung more than I expected. Not because I wanted to believe she was the only one, but because part of me had still been assigning her a special role in this story. As if maybe, for Jason, she was the affair that changed him. But she wasn't. She was a pattern. Just one of many. He used charm like a *P***N. A well-fitted suit, expensive cologne, false vulnerability. Ashley wasn't the first to fall for it. She just happened to be the one who left the most evidence behind. By the end of that week, Luis's contact confirmed Jason was being formally investigated. Not just for professional misconduct, but for falsified travel expenses, fabricated meetings, and several violations of company policy. And I didn't even have to raise my voice. Meanwhile, Ashley kept walking through our house like nothing was shifting under her feet. She still made coffee in the morning, still answered emails on the couch, still scrolled through Instagram while half watching Netflix beside me. But I saw it. The cracks. The way she paused when opening her inbox. The extra care she took in choosing her words during work calls. The way she started looking at her phone like it might explode. She didn't know how close everything was to unraveling. Not yet, but she felt it. Jason, on the other hand, he knew. Ashley told me about it on a Thursday night, just after dinner. We were doing dishes, and she suddenly said, "Jason's acting weird lately." I didn't react. He's not joking around like he used to. He's quiet, kind of tense. Oh, I said. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe something's going on at home or something. I kept drying plates. She went on casually. I asked him if he was okay, and he said, "You ruined everything," just like that, then walked off. What did you say? Nothing, she shrugged. What was I supposed to say? I said nothing, because what could she say? She knew what that meant. She just didn't want to face it. She didn't know that Jason had already tried to spin a version of the story, tried to say it was all mutual, casual, consensual. But when you're already on thin ice, and someone hands internal compliance a map showing every step you took, your version starts to look like a fiction. Especially when it's not just one woman. Especially when one of them already brought a lawyer. I knew about that too. Luis sent me a brief update. An associate consultant filed formal complaint. Your data helped her case. I didn't reply, but I felt something that bordered on relief. Not revenge. Just accountability. Jason wasn't falling because I pushed him. He was falling because he built his career on handshakes and lies. And eventually, someone was bound to say, "No more." I just happened to be holding the flashlight. Ashley still hadn't mentioned her statement. Still pretended that Jason's tension was unrelated to anything she'd been part of. I let her. I wasn't going to correct her version. Because soon, she'd have to confront the real one. Ashley mentioned Jason had changed. He no longer made jokes during meetings or stood too close. One day, she told me he muttered, "You ruined everything. He destroyed it all." She didn't respond. She didn't ask who he was. But I think she knew. By then, compliance had looped her in. Not to interrogate, but to confirm. Jason tried spinning it all as playful, misread signals, and poor judgment. But the dossier Luis delivered told a cleaner, quieter story. It had dates, receipts, GPS tags, witnesses. Jason was finished before he knew he'd started falling. I didn't need to confront him. I'd already introduced him to someone far more dangerous. The truth. 2 weeks later, we attended the company banquet. Ashley wore soft blue. I wore silence. Jason was there but sidelined. His name missing from the program, his badge unscanned. He approached us once. You didn't have to interfere like that. I looked him in the eye and said, I didn't say a word. Silence keeps excellent records. He blinked. Ashley walked past him. At our table, her nameplate read, Ashley Miller, Division Head. No one said his name, not even behind closed doors.